Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a book review for Final Girls by Riley Sager. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box below for links to all of my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways from me. Final Girls is an adult thriller, and this is the third book by Riley Sager I've read. I've also read Lock Every Door and Home Before Dark, and I do have reviews for both of those books. I will link them up in the cards as well as in the description box if you're interested in checking them out. And this is also the first thriller I've read of 2022. I actually have not been reading thrillers for more than like 2 years, and I really do like them. I just don't get to them very often. But in Final Girls, we are following a main character named Quincy Carpenter, and when Quincy was in college, she was involved in a killing massacre that took place in the middle of the woods at this cottage known as Pine Cottage. And she was there with a bunch of her college friends, and some crazy person attacked them, killed everybody, and Quincy was the only one who was able to get out alive. She was rescued by this cop named Coop, and he ended up killing the assailant, and he and Quincy have remained in contact for about 10 years, so it's been 10 years since the original incident, and Quincy has tried to move on. She now runs this baking blog. She got like a lot of money and settlements from everything that happened to her, and she is living with her boyfriend, who is a defense lawyer, so she's just trying to, exist and have a normal life. The term Final Girls comes from a horror movie where all the other people die and there's that one girl left standing. So there are actually a couple other of Final Girls in this book that have been through something similar to Quincy. So the first one is Lisa, and Lisa was involved in someone who attacked a sorority house, killed everybody. Lisa got away. And then there's another girl named Samantha, and Samantha was at an inn. Some crazy person came and slaughtered the people at the inn, and she was the only one to survive. So Lisa and Quincy keep in contact with one another because they have such a unique experience, and there's really no one that either one of them can talk to that have been through something like that. And there's, all of the people online that love true crime and are trying to get in contact with them, and people that are trying to book interviews, and there's the press and the media. So both of these girls are trying to move on from their trauma as well as deal with, the everyday struggles of being a final girl. And then there is Samantha, and Samantha just kind of dropped off the grid. No one knows where she is or anything, what's going on with Samantha. Until one day, Samantha just shows up to Quincy's apartment in New York City unannounced and kind of inserts herself into Quincy's life. The inciting incident in this book happens when Quincy finds out that Lisa has committed suicide. Quincy just finds it really odd and really suspicious. There's no reason why Lisa would do that. She seems to have been dealing with her trauma and just living a great life. They followed each other on social media. So there's just a lot of suspicion around Lisa's suicide. And then we have Samantha that shows up out of the blue. And then one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that Quincy doesn't remember a lot from what happened at Pine Cottage. She gets kind of glimpses here and there of exactly the events that occurred that night, but she's just dealing with that trauma and has blacked everything out. So I think that Riley Sager established Quincy early on as an unreliable narrator because she purposely is not remembering certain things. So we don't know the truth about what happened at Pine Cottage from Quincy's perspective. And I think it was a good idea for Riley Sager to do this. He actually separates the book into dual timelines. So you have the flashback parts of the book that are written in third person, and this are all the events that happened at Pine Cottage. And then you have the present day that deal with Quincy, Samantha, and Lisa's death. So as the story goes on and more reveals happen, we see the events of the two timelines slowly come together, coalesce, and let the reader know the truth about what happened at Pine Cottage, who exactly murdered all of those people, why, and how all of these other characters, all of these other events, Lisa's death, the arrival of Samantha, how it all fits into the story, because there is a lot more that's going on with these characters and with the events than you would think from the beginning of the book. So one thing I will say about Riley Sager is that I read a couple of reviews that say that his books are very boring. And this, like I said, is my third Riley Sager book, and I think that's just how he writes books, meaning that he starts off the plot extremely slow, and he just gives little bits of information that make the reader be like, that's odd. And then I would say not until about I was done with 75% of this book did like the reveals just start rolling in. So if you're going to read a Riley Sager book, just know that those like the juicy parts of the story are coming. He just waits towards later on in the end. Now I'm going to be talking about a couple of spoilery points, so I will put a timestamp down in the description box so you can skip to my rating if you want. So one thing I really didn't like about Quincy was her proclivity to violence, apparently. So we get the timeline where she's at Pine Cottage and she is, you know, trying to date this guy Craig. She plans to like lose her virginity to Craig, and Craig, they're not dating. Like, he seems like just a regular college guy who wants to hook up, and deep down Quincy knows this, and once she realizes that it's just going to be a hookup, she, you know, says no, she's not interested. And then Craig goes off to sleep with her best friend Janelle, and Quincy sees them. And Quincy got so mad, so enraged, that she literally grabs a knife and walks into the woods like she's going to do something to them. And then we have what happened in the current timeline where Quincy literally beat a man senseless for no reason. And yes, they were in the middle of Central Park in the middle of the night, and he was strung out on drugs, but he wasn't attacking her. He was acting a little weird, but he didn't initiate any attack, and she literally beats him till he's in a coma. She has violent tendencies. She needs to see a therapist. Like, something's going on with her. So I personally didn't like her that much as a character. Number one, I thought she was stupid because she lets Samantha into her home. She knows nothing about this woman, nothing. The woman's acting weird. She's been off the grid for years. She doesn't answer any of Quincy's questions. Like, I would not let a person that I did not know like that into my home, into my life. And then she just lets Samantha manipulate her into, you know, going into Central Park and getting in these little brawls with people. And Samantha was just a horrible influence on Quincy, but I feel like Quincy allowed it. So I wasn't a fan of Quincy. I definitely wasn't a fan of Sam. And I get Sam's motivation. You know, she wanted to clear her friend Joe's name, but I just don't feel like that motivation justified her actions. So all of Riley Sager's main characters I personally didn't like. So there were just a couple things in the book that just didn't make sense to me. The first one being Quincy wanting to be violent. Like, just because your best friend's sleeping with some guy you like you don't go around killing people for that. That's insanity right there. But then number two, we have Coop, who I actually did like at the beginning of the book. He's been there for Quincy. You know, he saved her essentially from this murdering lunatic, like, supposedly. And I did like him. But then he and Quincy had some underlying sexual tension that was revealed later on, and then they sleep together. And then Coop says he never wants to see her again. So then finding out at the end, what we find out at the end, I was like, that doesn't make any sense, because Coop was in love with her, a little bit obsessed with her, so he got what he wanted, and then he was like, I don't want to see you anymore. It just didn't make sense. And then finally, we get to the big reveal. What actually happened at Pine Cottage? Who killed all those people? It turned out to have been Coop, the cop. And I should have seen this from the beginning, and here's why. So when we learn exactly how Coop saved Quincy, it went down like this. Quincy was running through the woods covered in blood, and Joe emerges behind her. But now we know that he didn't have a knife because Coop was the one that was killing everybody with the knife. So Joe was just running behind Quincy to get away from Coop. And Coop circumvented, he got in front of them with his car or whatever, and he shoots Joe. And I'm thinking in my head, like, nowadays, you can't just shoot people, especially Joe, because we learned that he was unarmed because Coop was the one with the knife. So he shot an unarmed man, and, like, there was no investigation from the cops, like, no investigation from his department, nothing. He just got away with that. And I feel like that's a little unbelievable, because if you murder someone, I feel like there's going to be an investigation. So when I first read that Coop shot the murderer of the people of Pine Cottage, I don't know, it just didn't make sense to me, and it didn't sit well with me, but I never put two and two together that Coop could have been the murderer of Pine Cottage. So I liked the reveal. I thought it was pretty good, and I was surprised. I just wish I had caught it a little earlier, because the whole time I'm like, yeah, that was really odd, that whole explanation of how Coop saved Quincy. That just doesn't make sense. So I thought Riley Sager did a really good job, and I really liked how he tied in, like, the life of Joe and Samantha, or Tina. Really, really, like, wove those two storylines and character plot lines into the main plot. I thought he did a really good job with that. All right, you guys, so overall, I really enjoyed Final Girls. Riley Sager's books are super quick, super easy to read, and I got done with it in a couple of days, and the reveals were great at the end. I really enjoyed it. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I will definitely be reading more of his work. Let me know in the comments if you have any good thriller recommendations for me, and I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye!